Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In keeping with the holiday theme, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys how I make sponge cake. So right here I have some all-purpose flour, some granulated sugar, some softened butter, and I'm using salted butter here, and I have some vanilla extract, a little bit of cream of tartar, as well as some baking powder. And then I also have some green and red maraschino cherries, just to add a little color to my cake. But if you wanted to omit them, you could. And if you just wanted to use one color or the other, you could go ahead and do that also. I also have my eggs here, but I've separated my whites into one bowl and I've separated the yolks into one bowl. And I'm going to show you guys why I did that later. Also for the sugar, the original recipe calls for a pound of sugar, but I'm just using about 3/4 of a pound because the pound for me makes the cake a little too sweet. But of course you could add the pound of sugar or you could lessen it. For this recipe here, I'm going to go ahead and use my stand mixer just because it's a little easier for me to go ahead and mix my cake. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add in all of the egg whites into the mixer. And you want to make sure that you leave the eggs as well as the butter out at room temperature for at least 30 minutes before you make the cake, so this way they can mix properly and the butter can soften. I'm also adding in my cream of tartar here, so this way it'll stabilize the egg whites when they whip. So I want them to stay in stiff peaks, and the cream of tartar is going to help them stay like that. So I'm just going to whip this and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like when it's done. While my egg whites whip, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the dry ingredients for this recipe. I have my all-purpose flour in the bowl here, and I'm going to pour on all of my baking powder, and then I'm going to go ahead and give that a quick mix. At this point, once you mix it up, you could just set that aside and we'll move on to mixing the rest of our cake. My egg whites have been mixing in my stand mixer for about 2 minutes now on a medium-high speed, and as you guys can see, they've formed really nice stiff peaks. So that was because of the cream of tartar. They've stabilized and they've stayed in nice stiff peaks like this. I'm going to go ahead and add them all into my bowl here, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to mixing the rest of our cake. Once I took all of my egg whites out of this mixing bowl, I went ahead and I gave it a quick wipe down with a piece of paper towel, just so I could go ahead and mix in my other ingredients. So I'm adding in my softened butter here, and as I said before, it's softened so that it can mix properly with all of the other ingredients. And what I'm going to go ahead and do next is add in all of my sugar. And as I said before, you could lessen the sugar if you would like. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on about a medium speed, and I'm going to let this mixture whip until it's very light and fluffy. I let my butter and sugar whip in my mixer for about 3 minutes, and as you guys can see, it got very light in color and it's very fluffy now. So the next step is to go ahead and add in all of your vanilla extract, and we're going to turn that on to start mixing. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start adding in all of my egg yolks. So I'm going to add them in one at a time and allow them to mix evenly, and then go ahead and add in the next one. You want to do this so that they incorporate properly, because if you don't do this, then your butter mixture can start to separate on you. Once I added in all of the egg yolks into that butter and sugar mixture, I went ahead and I transferred it all into a big bowl here. Now the reason I did this was because my mixer bowl was a little too small, and it wouldn't have fit all of the flour that I would have had to add into this recipe. So at this step, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and take your flour and your baking powder mixture, and you're going to add in all of the cherries. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because whenever you add something into a cake, you want to make sure you coat it in some flour, so this way they don't sink to the bottom of the cake. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix them into my flour here, and then we can start adding the flour into the cake mixture. Once you've gotten all of your cherries mixed into that flour, we're going to start adding that whole mixture into the wet ingredients. So I'm going to add in half first, and I'm going to go ahead and mix that in, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in the other half. So this way you could just mix evenly. So you just want to go ahead and fold that in with your spatula, and you don't want to overmix at this step, because as you guys know, when you overmix flour, it develops the glutens a little too much and your cake can end up really tough in the end. So I'm just going to continue mixing in my flour. I'm going to add in the rest of the flour that I have in the other bowl, and then I'm going to show you guys what this whole mixture looks like. I finished adding in all of my flour and cherries into my wet ingredients, and what you're looking for is a smooth and thick batter in the end. So at this stage, we're going to start going ahead and adding in all of the egg whites. Now I want to add in a little bit of the egg whites at a time, and then I'm going to fold that in. So I just added in a little bit right here, and I'm going to go ahead and fold it in very lightly. If you mix this too hard or you over mix it, then these egg whites are going to deflate on you, and then your cake is going to be very flat and not fluffy, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to continue mixing in these egg whites. I'm going to add in a little bit at a time, and I'm going to keep working that in. and then I'm going to show you guys what that looks like in the end. I went ahead and I got all of my egg whites mixed into the cake batter, and the way that I know those egg whites did not deflate is because my cake batter looks like it doubled in size, so I know those air bubbles are still in there. So we're going to go ahead and start putting them into the pans to bake. I have two 13 by 9 inch baking trays here, and what I've gone ahead and done is I've put some parchment paper down on them to go ahead and just lift them out of the pans as soon as the cakes come out of the oven. But if you wanted to, you could go ahead and put some butter at the bottom of the trays, and that would work out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and divide up the batter between both trays as evenly as possible, just so that they could finish at the same time in the oven and they'd cook evenly. And I also wanted to mention that this does make 2 large cakes, as you guys can see right here. So if you wanted to, this recipe is very easy to just go ahead and cut in half, and you could just make 1 cake. I've divided up the batter between both trays as evenly as possible, and I went ahead and I smoothed out the tops. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to pop my cakes into my oven that's been preheated at 350 degrees, and I'm going to put them in for 20 minutes first, and then I'm going to take them out and check them. Within that 20 minutes, you do not want to open your oven, because if you do, these cakes can deflate on you. After the 20 minutes, you could open up your oven and stick a toothpick in the cakes and see if they're done or not. If they're not, then you could go ahead and gauge the time and see how much longer they need. Alright guys, I just pulled my cakes out of the oven and they were baking for exactly 25 minutes. Now of course the first 20 minutes I made sure not to open that oven so this way my cakes would not deflate. And then after the 20 minutes I pulled them out and I checked them with the toothpick and they needed a little while longer. So I left them in for about an additional 5 minutes and they finished. And you want to make sure that when you're baking your cakes, you see a really nice golden brown top, just like mine have. So I'm going to let these cool, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to slice it up. After my cakes finished cooling, I went ahead and I pulled them out of the pans. And of course, that was much easier with the parchment paper. I just went ahead and pulled them out. And I'm going to go ahead and slice it up for you guys to see how they look on the inside. And when you're touching the top, you want to make sure that it feels nice and spongy and it comes back when you push your finger on it. And that's how you know that your cake is going to be really moist and fluffy on the inside. So I'm just going to cut off a piece and show you guys what it looks like. You're going to see that little cherry popping out. And when you push down on it, you want it to fluff right back up in your hands. That's how you know your cake is really fluffy on the inside. And all of the sides are nice and golden brown. And it's not dry at all. If it turns really crumbly and stuff, that's how you know it's dry. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. And leave a comment down below on what you guys would like me to make next. Once again, thanks for watching.